Everything is personal right here. Everything is personal right here.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of Everything is Personal. And today, our guest is Dr. Joe Polich. How are you?
How are
Welcome.
you? I'm doing great.
I'm doing good as well. Can't complain. I always talk about how important the weather is because I lived in Philly for most of my life and I lived in LA for the last 15 or so years. And it's like every single day you get up and you have sunshine. It just makes such a huge difference in your life. And especially if there's some sort of healing journey that you're on. I mean, weather plays such a role, at least I feel.
Yeah, I'm the same. Well, I moved here from Chicago
Yeah.
like 9 years ago, and I'm just south of you. I'm in San Diego, and so this is interesting. I used to because there were so few gorgeous days in Chicago, if it was not raining, the temperature was decent, you had to go outside. I think I'm finally over that now, and that I could see a beautiful day and not go outside.
You should go outside anyway.
Yeah, I do, but it's not upset. It's not like, oh, we got to take the best of this. Like I
Oh no,
don't
I know
take the
exactly what
best.
you mean. I remember when I had a house in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, and I remember I had this huge idea of building a deck, and a deck would be like outside sliding doors outside my kitchen, and it would go around my house, and I would have all these. I would barbecue, and I would have all these people over, and it's like too hot, too cold, snow, rain, this and that,
Yep,
and I hardly use that. So yeah,
yep.
it makes all the difference in the world. Um, okay, so how do you define healing?
Oh, that's interesting. So, for me, true healing, it's interesting because I just recently listened to your podcast with Dr. Gonzalez. He actually think very similarly about healing. There's a fundamental aspect of healing, which is you actually are improving the tissues that are there. So, for instance, reduction of pain is not healing. So, for instance, you can use steroids that shut down basically the healing process in order to reduce the pain. That doesn't mean you're going to heal. And that's why, for the most part, they don't let you get steroid injections too much because it can damage the tissue. So, for me, natural healing is the key. Your body, has been designed through, since we were amoebas. As you go through evolution, we were taught to heal and heal best. Anything we do, I mean, I've got 3 engineering degrees and spent a lot of time working on space satellites and fiber optics and saw very, very complex systems. But there's nothing anywhere close to the complexity about how our body works. And as a result of it, we can heal better than anything else. And so anything we do with a medication or something, and some of them are lovely and some of them are really life-saving, but it will always be a very superficial mimic of what the body already knows how to do. Does that answer your question?
I mean, it does answer my question because that's your position on this, and I tend to agree with you because like I had an injury some time ago, and when I went and got my MRI, I went to the surgeon,
Mhm.
and the first thing they told me is, well, number one, we can inject it. Okay, so you can inject it. What is that going to do? Well, that's going to block the pain, the feeling of the pain. Well, I said, well, why do I want to do that? Why do I want so you can function? But I said, and by the way, I'm not a doctor. So I'm just a lay person that's having this conversation. But in my mind, I'm trying to think through this. So if my body it wants to heal itself, and if I block that feeling of pain, I'm going to injure myself or possibly injure myself more because if I'm moving, like I want my muscles, I torn meniscus both sides. So I want I want to hike, and I hike almost on a daily basis. But if I don't feel that pain, I may re-injure myself. The pain is letting me know that I shouldn't put my foot down a certain way. So I don't understand the concept behind that. And we'll talk about the option number two, which was surgery, which is another thing that I really wasn't clear on.
So I think you're absolutely right. One of the other things is I became a chiropractor and then I got a postdoc in homeopathy, which really informs a ton about how I see healing. And you're right. It's like one of the things, like using painkillers when you injure yourself is really not always good. I mean, sometimes you have to because you can't function, and obviously that's a need. But for the most part, pain is telling you don't do that. You know, as a chiropractor, it's like you don't want somebody to exercise. Like people, you know, let's say they're working out and you're like, okay, do I work out, you know, in through pain? No, because basically it's like pain is a stop signal. It's
Yeah.
a very good, simple stop signal. With the injection, were they going to do a steroid injection? Oh, yeah. And
Yeah,
so
steroid.
those, yeah, I don't love steroids, gotta admit, because it deals with pain, but it does it by blocking what your body naturally does. And in the long, it's a short-term fix that I think has long-term negative effects on the body, which is why they limit it so much.
Yeah, and the second solution was surgery.
Mhm.
So the idea was to go in and snip the meniscus where it's torn on one side and then on the other side. And I went to three different surgeons. And maybe surgeons aren't the people I'm supposed to go to, but you know,
Mhm.
you talked about Dr. Gonzalez and stem cells and all that stuff. So that is an option to regrow tissue. But I don't know. I had this question. So I said, if you're going to cut something out on one side and the other, and forget the scar tissue and all that stuff, just an invasive procedure, just from a kind of visual. So I have this disc, and you're going to make it smaller, and you're going to cut it more and more. But I'm also active. You know, I'm in my 50s, and I still hopefully have, you know, some life left, active life left. But the less, you're not putting anything to replace it. You're just taking it out. So that's the case. The more I use it, the more chance I have to, you know, remove all of it basically and have, you know, bone on bone, and I'm a candidate for knee replacement. So I don't understand why that's a go-to solution as well in 2024. Let's just cut it out.
You know, because they don't, because, you know, physicians, bless their heart, they want to help. There's no question in my mind. They will try and figure out a way to help. And the problem is they don't really have any other solutions in general. So they're forced to say, okay, I've got a patient who is in pain. The patient will be in pain for time immortal, or I can cut it out and it gets rid of the pain. I honestly have never researched it, so I don't know what the long-term ramifications are of meniscus removal. But to me, I just have a fundamental belief system that if your body designed it, it should stay there if at all possible. So what did you do? I'm curious now.
I tore my meniscus
No,
in.
no, what did you do to fix it? Like,
I did not make a decision yet, but uh my last appointment was a stem cell treatment. So there's two options I can do. I can go offshore because for some reason we're not allowed to do this amazing procedure in the United States. So I can go and get, you know, stem cells injected, or the other procedure that was recommended to me by the third surgeon that I saw is they're going to be able to remove marrow from my hip bone, spin it, create my own stem cells, and re-inject them. And they can do it a couple times to see if I can regrow tissue. And for me, that makes a lot more logical sense to help my body heal itself rather than just cut it out. And it's still an invasive procedure and all that, but it gives me a little
so
hope.
we didn't plan this, but actually I've got a third solution, and that is I'll just send you patches.
Okay.
So I have, and it's one of those things where it's a situation where I see it less often. So I can't, I tend to be very, 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 very accurate on what I know and what I don't know. not that I know everything, but I personally have healed my meniscus. I had when I blew my ACL out and ruptured my ACL, my meniscus went a little bit later because that's not unusual when you've got a loose knee. And I've had a number of patients who have gotten better. What I'm not sure is there's different types of meniscus tears. Some of them called bucket tears, bucket handle, maybe. And I basically am not sure 100% if it will tear those or it will heal those because those have very low blood flow to them.
Okay.
But let's try it and let's see how it goes. I would
Right.
always use this first before you get surgery because, you know, again, it's very anecdotal because you just don't run into that many people, but I know of at least 3, maybe 4 cases where it's healed it up without any surgery.
I would love to try it, and I'll give
And
a testimonial of how it
you
works
can
for me.
report to your people a little bit later. But you know, it really comes down to, so I guess it kind of makes sense to talk about Actimen, which you see. So I literally made, by the way, I made that. This is the first time that has ever been seen. Because I'm like, okay, one of your other guests had a really nice background. And I'm like, I need to do that. So I did this today.
Very cool.
So basically, your body, it's so similar to, by the way, to the way Gonzalez talked about it. Your body knows how to heal itself. You think of like animals, for the most part, I'm sure they sprain things and they just get better. They don't do steroids, they don't do anything. They just get better and they stay off of it when they're in pain. Smart people, right? And so what Activen, which is a homeopathic product, most common ingredient that people would know would be arnica. We figured out how to make it way more effective because it's in a patch form and we patented it and all sorts of things, right? And what it does, or it seems to do, and this is where I want to be careful because I've got 3 engineering degrees and then I've been practicing with this for like 20 years. Oh, you're a cute little.
That's my co-host. That's
yeah. So I have a cute little puppy dog, but she tends the bark, so she's over there. And it's like because I didn't want her to make noise while we're on the call. She has a tendency to bark. So basically, your body knows how to heal something better than anything. And what we seem to do is just amplify that response. So I'll show you something. Can I show a PowerPoint? Is that allowed? I didn't see it in any of the other ones. It's a really cool set of pictures.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. We might as well start, right? So, wrong PowerPoint. I thought I cleared all the PowerPoints. So well, that's close enough. That'll work. Wasn't the one I was planning on, but we're there, so we're going to use it. So this is a case. You see this really nasty, right? This is my son who very kindly flipped over a trampoline and smashed his eye, so he got 4 stitches here. This is him day 3. He didn't swell. And this is him day 5. And what you see here is you see how quickly he heals up. That's because we basically initiated the healing response that helped him heal a whole lot faster than he would otherwise. So now I'll get the right one. What you can see, this is a more recent one that I really was planning on showing you. And this one was initiated this is like in the last couple months. Can you see this big knock on her head? I call them goose eggs.
Yeah.
Do you see that?
Yes.
We put the patch on. This is a little baby. This is her an hour and a half later.
Wow.
Because we took what you normally do. She would have healed up just fine without it, right? We took what you normally do and just amplified it. Yeah. Same thing here. Oops, that's the one for my son. This is a sprained ankle. This was actually happened in the last 3 weeks. he sprains his ankle, and actually his wife is a physical therapist, and she's like amazed. She's like, this is what he looks like 24 hours. Now, interestingly enough, ankles are the one thing. So think about how the body, you know why we swell so much with ankles, or at least why I perceive that we swell so much with ankles? It's like if you sprain your wrist, it never swells up this much, right? So it's called I need to run away from the lion. If you swell your ankle up, you can run away from the lion because it stabilizes it a little bit. So this is basically, he put our patch on. This is what he looks like the next day because we accelerated how fast he healed. He never ended up on crutches. He was fine enough the next day. I actually have a video that I'm not going to show you of him basically walking downstairs. So all of this is to show is and it was funny because Dr. Gonzalez talked about it. When we were kids, we healed like this. But as we get older, we don't. We still sprain our ankle and it still swells. But for instance, within the athletic community, there's a number of people that they call super healers. And they're just people who heal faster than everyone else. And all we're doing is amplifying the healing. So your swelling reduces. And I'll make a very clear difference to steroids. We're doing it naturally. Your swelling is diminishing, not because we're taking the swelling down. It's because the body's amplified, it's healing, and you don't need to be swollen anymore. Does that make sense?
Yes. Are you attracting more healing cells to the area that can actually reduce that inflammation and and sort of stabilize your immune response to the injury?
So, and again, I need to be careful because we've never researched it.
Right.
So we've never done research on this. But what you basically bring in cytokines and natural killer cells and all these things to clean up the area. The way I describe it and the way I believe, and this is based on 20 years worth of observation, research, we've done research, we've seen the clinical aspects of it. But what it appears to do is simply that when you put this patch on, so it's easy to discuss in bruising, right?
Yeah.
Let's say I run my arm into the table, right? It's going to cause a little bruise. When I put this patch on, it makes your body believe that you got hit by a baseball bat. So you just amplify the number of natural killer cells and cytokines, et cetera, that come in there to heal it up. And that's all it's doing. It's using what your body normally does and just amplifies it so that you don't, so that you heal up the tissue. Once you heal up the tissue, you don't need the swelling as much.
Got it. All right, let me take it back a little bit and rewind to sort of a little bit of your background. You already mentioned you grew up in Chicago. Is that
I actually grew up in Detroit.
Okay. So you moved to Chicago later on in life?
Yeah, I basically grew up in Detroit. So I know you always love to ask about so let's see, grew up poor family. By the way, that seems to be a consistent thing with the people that you actually interview. Grew up super poor.
I think what I'm not doing a social study experiment or something, but
Yeah.
I believe that people that have and I'm in a similar way, there's a certain journey and certain obstacles, and it creates a level of resilience and sort of the self-reliance, I guess, because you don't have all these other things that are given to you. So you're forced to be in that situation. That's why I think people that come through from that type of family life build these calluses and like, all right, can't be worse than what I had. I lived on the street. Okay, I can rely on me. So that's sort of my social experiment.
All of my siblings, I have 3 siblings, and we're all really successful. I mean, I can credit my oldest brother. So the things that we were lucky is we're all pretty smart. My parents actually met at a magnet school for intelligent people, and they fortunately gave us those genes. But then my mother had a baby when she was 17. My dad had to drop out of college and the whole 9 yards. Yeah. And so hence we were poor. And so what happens is my oldest brother goes to University of Michigan, which is top, I think it's ranked 7-ish, but certainly top 10 engineering school in the country. and he's older than me by a bit. And I'm in high school, and I'm like, what do I do? And he's like, you're good in math and science, go get an engineering degree. And granted, it was hard. It's so funny because I literally, weirdly, I don't even know how I did this. I got 2 engineering degrees, worked, had to pay for college myself. So basically worked at least 20 hours a week, and also managed to play soccer at least one season. I'm not sure how I managed all of that. I gotta be honest with you. But yeah, I have no idea how I did that. But you look back at your young self and you're like, okay, why did you do all these things? Anyway, but it's really that, but you're right, it's that tenacity. And I think it's maybe almost a self-selecting thing that if you get out of that environment, you needed to be tough. You needed to do it. And all 4 of us siblings are all in our different areas quite successful and quite good at what we do.
When you were a kid, and I know you mentioned math and science, and then you also mentioned sports. Did you have something that says, let's say, like, I'm an avid reader. I'm kind of interested in tinkering, and I want to go into something that I can build stuff. Or was there something that really connected to you that you really wanted to do?
No. I mean, like it'd be like how I did work on cars because my dad made me, would be more
Yeah.
than anything. But I think for me, it was just an economic thing. I wanted a job that when I graduated, I would get a job and I would no longer be poor.
Yeah,
It
I
was
I
purely
understand.
economic.
I
Yeah.
understand because I wanted to do music, and then my parents had an intervention for me and said that if you go to physical therapy school, you'll make your 65,000 a year and you have a steady income and all that stuff. So it's that I think it's sort of a scarcity mentality instead of an abundance mentality, because you can do anything you want. And if it was, my daughter, if she wants to do music, great. Whatever it is that you want to do, it's your life. Explore. I'm all for it. But I think it's that mentality of scarcity. But so in engineering, my dad was an engineer, so I kind of have an understanding of that mentality. But where did chiropractic come in?
So that's a very odd story. So I'm I loved engineering, loved it, absolutely loved it. I spent most of my time problem solving. I worked on super interesting things like technologies that were cutting edge at the time. I was appointed weirdly to two corporate, I worked for a big company at one point called Alcatel, which is a huge telecommunications firm, and apparently was appointed to 2 technical boards, one in fiber optics and one in space satellites. So super capable, technical in that world, loved it. And then my daughter got sick. And so what happened was I knew nothing about homeopathy. She'd had diarrhea every single day, like 3 times a day. She's in diapers. And you literally needed to change it right away or she'd be raw. And so I took her to every single doctor, researched it everywhere, trying to figure out what could be going on with her. Took her to every specialist and everything, and they're like, we have no idea, right? And so one day I went into Whole Foods and there was a little vial that said diarrhea on it. And it fortunately was in the A's, otherwise I might not have ever found it. And I gave it to her, and she's now 2 because it's been going on for a year. And for the first time in a year, she thinks it's candy. She also, I don't think any child could say, okay, today I'm not going to have diarrhea. I don't think placebo works in this case. And for the first time, her stools are solid. And I was blown away. And I think this is also a common thing in the people, and it's probably because I think it's characteristic of you. I have very, very high intellectual curiosity. And so I start researching it. And what I realized is what she had should not have worked. That the dilution was so high that it should not have worked. I then, started taking mommy homeopathic classes, and along the way realized that I was, because of my engineering background, I'm actually good at homeopathy, which takes a lot of analytical capability. And I realized I cared more about, like, I was at one point the director of engineering, and one of my employees had a problem And I realized that I cared more about, I cared more about healing him than I did whether he got his software done. And I realized that I needed to change. And so I quit my job, got a chiropractic degree, did a postdoc in homeopathy, and then accidentally, while I was in chiropractic school, figured this out. So, yeah.
How trying to think how to ask this question, because I've only went to a chiropractor maybe 3 or 4 times. Why is it a good healing modality?
Chiropractic. So I have to be very, very honest. I've never outside of going through clinic, I've never practiced chiropractic. I've only done homeopathy.
Got it.
So I'm probably not the best person to answer that. I always reach for homeopathy, and I also don't go to chiropractors very often, even though I am one. I think that there's something to say for, again, one of the beautiful things is it's completely natural. It is something where most of them now, you being a PT, physical therapist, most of them basically integrate physical therapy to it as well at this point. And so it can help in that you can get increased joint. Let's say that like there's things like your sacroiliac joint can be out of place. Just getting it to start moving and just getting it to like, hey, I need to be moving. And then including the physical therapy with it, I think can just help. I think it's almost like the way I would describe it. And by the way, I'm sure I'm really annoying a lot of chiropractors right now because it's literally been 20 years since I've really paid attention to this. The way I would describe it is that you're kind of stuck sometimes, and getting yourself moving is super important. And then going back to where we were talking about natural healing, if things are fixed, you're not gonna get things in there. You're not gonna get the nutrients that you're in there, but you get it to start moving, and I think everything just works better. So
makes sense. So in your journey, and correct me if I butcher the name of the company, Sierra.
Yeah, no, you're right.
I got it right. How did you create that? What happened in your life to say, now I need to create a company?
So I would have been really happy not being an entrepreneur. I didn't seek it out. It kind of happened to me. So I'm in chiropractic school, and I'd been using, because I'd been studying homeopathy for a while, I've been using arnica, which is a super common gel that you find around. Let's see, I have some here. So this is a really common gel that you'll find, right? Find it all the time, right? And so I had a patient, you know what, I'm sure as a physical therapist, you know what a trigger point is, right? So basically a trigger point, just for your audience, is basically when your muscles move and they're not moving perfectly, you get a buildup of essentially waste into an area, and it can cause annoyance. And typically you find this out when you go get a massage where they press on it and you want to just like lose your mind, right? You're like, don't do that. Anyway.
Or do that more, but it hurts really bad.
Yeah,
but it's exactly what you need
right?
to.
Yeah. So she's an elderly lady, and she had a trigger point. She's very thin, that is so big, you can see a lump on her back.
Wow.
And so we're trying to do the normal therapy with, chiropractic, and she'd seen other chiropractors. She had really bad headaches. And so we try the normal chiropractic things aren't working. And I'm like, I wonder if arnica would help this. By the way, I have no idea, right? And I go to my clinician, and so there's these, but there's also arnica pills that are in little vials like this. And these are way higher potency, right? And so what I want, go to my clinician, I'm like, can I give this to her? And she's like, no, we're chiropractors. We can't give people things. And I'm like, oh, we are legally able to in the state, but it was policy of the school I was at. And I'm like, So I'm like, and plus I didn't want to give her this because it's really low potency, and it's not terrible. I mean, it's nice, but it's not really anything close to what this is. And so this one here, which is the same potency, what's in here is like about 1,000 times the potency of this. So I definitely want to use this with my patient. And so what I decide to do is I decide to put together, I'm a materials engineer. I put together a concoction to put on this patient. It was amazing. The trigger point dropped like in half. Didn't affect her headaches at all, but the trigger point dropped in half. And so then what happened was I used it on patients. So I used this like, like actually the goose egg picture that I showed you, one of my patient had told me about this happening with their baby. Like 15 years ago, and I'd never seen it. That picture was the first time I'd actually seen it. And so I used it on patients for a while. And then what happened was, and I'm like, oh yeah, it's nice. It works really well. And, like maybe 20% better than people would heal. And then I ruptured my ACL. So I ruptured my ACL. I use my nice little concoction and I don't swell. And I don't know much about ACLs, but I go because we're chiropractors, we got to see the best orthopedics in the country because we refer back and forth. And so I was in Chicago and I went and saw the head of orthopedics at Northwestern who, like super sweet, elderly, conservative guy, had been the orthopedist for the Bears, kind of somebody you want to bow to, right? Because he's brilliant and capable and et cetera, et cetera. And he comes in and he's like, and I'm in the first appointment getting planning for him to repair my ACL. And he's like, did you swell? And I don't think anything of it. I'm like, no. He's like, he looks at me like I just grew an ear here. And he looks at me and he's like, that's not possible. And I'm like, what do you mean? He said, in my 30 years of being head of orthopedics or Northwestern, I've never seen an ACL that hasn't swollen. And I'm like, and I kind of told him what I did. And he kind of looked at me like I had an ear coming out of my head because this is impossible and not possible. And so but I'm like, just repair my knee. And so I do the surgery and I don't use anti-inflammatories because I'm just going to use the same concoction, right? Again, going back to, I want to naturally heal if I possibly can. And I don't want to use something that's going to suppress anything if I can. And so I go see him, you see him like roughly once a week. And he's like, and I don't realize this until I talk to him later. He is, in his sweet grandpa way, very worried about me. And I'm like, and I think I'm like, oh no, I'm not using anti-inflammatories. I'm using the same stuff I used before. And he's like, Joe, I'm really worried about you not using these. Anyway, so in a month, he did a complete 180. He said, I don't know. So because he had lots of data on this, typically in the absence of anti-inflammatories at a month, because we didn't do PT, not like an athlete. So we just, walked around and did whatever you normally do. You can't move your knee. And instead, I actually still have the PT report. I had almost complete movement of my knee, very little deficit. And it was the fact that at a month, he knew I'd never used anti-inflammatories and I was so much better. He said, I don't know what you did, but you're better than 90% of my patients that use anti-inflammatories. And you've discovered something remarkable. And it was the fact that he's super conservative. I know research, and you don't call it on one case unless it's so unusual and so impossible that you've discovered something remarkable. And so it made me write the first patent. And so what happened was I realized, and so going back to my employee where I knew I could help them, for me, what I realized is that I could help hundreds of people being a homeopathic practicing, or I could help thousands and thousands and millions of people by bringing this product out. And so I did it.
I think it's a great story. And I think it's a great lesson for people who are didn't set out to be an entrepreneur, but have an idea, have a concept, and have a huge why. And I think that connects people to be able to get out of their comfort level and do what probably we're supposed to do anyway. The journey's never like a straight line. Sometimes it zigzags all over the place and gets you to that point. I have some, like, arnica has been used for thousands of years. Never became a mainstream, like, it's not prescribed. I know it's not like an FDA approved product for a specific condition, but it's readily available. I mean, you show those little tablet pills that you can get at Whole Foods.
These you take by this is similar to the one that I found for my daughter.
Right.
This is basically their, I'll show your people, like their little, I don't know if you can see this.
Yeah, you get a twist off and it's got a little
Little
pellet
pellet.
in there. Yeah.
One of
I
my favorites.
remember because
Yeah.
my ex-wife had a procedure done, and the doctor actually told her, goes, hey, if you want to reduce bruising, use some arnica. So I remember going to but I never understood, like, okay, so you're taking it, you're ingesting it. Okay, that's one thing. But then there's a topical, but it's a dermal product. Do you need to have something that transdermal so it actually goes deeper in that layer to be able to attract those NK cells and things that you're talking about, cytokines, to help the healing process faster? Or is it dermal, on the skin?
So one of the things that I learned later is that it's very odd that this goes through the skin. So that's the first thing. What I would say is and again, I need to be, and one of the things that I hope people really understand is that I'm super transparent. I try desperately, because of my engineering degree, we don't like to be wrong, to be really clear on what I know and what I don't know. What I suspect is it's similar to the way stem cells work, where they go to where you need it. Meaning that this in combination with your body goes to the area where it's needed. But it's also very localized. We have pictures, and I have some pictures from the plastic surgery world. By the way, something like 70% of plastic surgeons use arnica.
Yeah. It was, I didn't want to,
Yeah.
I don't want to say what kind of procedure it was, but
Yeah.
you're absolutely right.
And in fact, one of the things that I've done, I mean, there's a number of things, because I approach things from such a scientific basis, and because of my authenticity, we had 4 past presidents of the American Society of Dermatological Surgeons who publicly said, yeah, this stuff works. We also got the first truly 100%. We had to convince the patent office that homeopathy was not quackery. We got that done. It took me 5 years, but we got it done. And then astoundingly, there's a big company called Allergan, who now is AbbVie. AbbVie bought them, but Allergan makes Botox. They talked to all the physicians, looked at our clinical studies, and they were like, yeah, this stuff works, and they licensed it from us.
That was my next question. I was just about to ask you how it felt to actually have a pharmaceutical company license your natural homeopathic product. I mean, not just the scientific, not just your engineering brain, but how did that make you feel?
So I can remember it was actually happened at JP Morgan, which is a big biotech meeting in January up in San Francisco. And I'd been meeting with them on and off. I'd been meeting with them and their competitors. And I went into this meeting and wasn't expecting it. I knew that they were more interested in meeting with me than they normally were. And it was really actually one of the top dermatologists in the country. He's, I think, ranked number 4 in the US News and World Report, who basically told the CEO of Allergan that this was a product that worked and they really needed to work with it. And so basically, I went into this meeting and they're like, yeah, we want to license it from you. And I just, like, one of the things going back to, there's a little bit of crazy optimistic in all people that do startups. We believe in the impossible. And I believed I could get this done 10 years before it happened. Why I thought I could get it done, I do not know. I got to be like, afterwards, I'm like, how could you ever do it? But I got to credit Dr. Roy Geronimus for helping get that through. He was so instrumental in it. And he's a dermatologist that's ranked number 4. And I walked out of there and I can just remember sitting down. I went downstairs because you're stunned, because you think you can do it, but getting it done and thinking you can do it are 2 different things. And then I called my board members, who were all super awesome people. And I just, I had to do it like in a place where no one could hear me because it's confidential, obviously. And I was just like, I was just stunned. I was absolutely stunned. Happy, but stunned.
No, it's an amazing thing, and I want to congratulate you on that because, you know, I've been I've been in the genetic space for many years,
Mhm.
and I have a question about genetics as well. But we have patents on formulations using cannabinoid products, and it's similar in a way where it's
Very
also
much.
natural medicine where but there's been such a stigma, such a disconnect that mainstream, even functional and integrated, but a lot more open to that. Even they have an association with the stigma of a product that grows from a plant. What's the difference between this plant and that plant kind of thing? It's just a mindset. So understanding what it takes to be able to bridge that gap between, the old guard of big pharma and the quackery or not of homeopathic medicine
Yeah.
has been used for thousands of years, and most of the medicines that we have came from plant medicine that just synthesized, but it's that bridging of the two. So I think it's a
Yeah. The
huge
barriers were
win.
huge. They
Yeah.
were, I mean, most physicians, plastic surgeons or dermatologists, not so much, which is why Allergan was specifically into plastic surgery. So they knew the doctors, they knew what had been used, and it's a relatively small group, but it is very insurmountable in so many different ways.
I don't know. Do you use nanotechnology for delivering the
So
actual?
in fact, there's research. So the big question in homeopathy is why does it work? It's really dilute. And
Yeah.
it turns out that there's a very small nanostructure, what we call Hassa nanostructures, that are formed when you make a homeopathic remedy, which are actually in large quantity. And so that's really what becomes the active ingredient. And that's unfortunately because of the stigma associated with homeopathy, there's never any money for research. Like I know a number of people who will not touch it, even though they personally do it, because they know that if they started doing research in homeopathy, would never get funded for anything else. And so one of the things that if Activement actually ever happens, one of my great desires is to do the research that nobody's ever done. We've done some, but I would rather fund tons more. But basically, there's a nanostructure that basically is the active ingredient and it's formed in a particular way when you make a homeopathic remedy.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. So are you thinking more observational studies for the time being, so you can actually treat it like a clinical study, but have controls as well, or are you just getting feedback and having people sort of document their processes along the way?
So one of the things that is actually not known is that homeopathy is actually regulated like a drug in the United States. It's the
Mhm.
only country in the world that does it. Everything else, it's more herbal. And so we have the same manufacturing requirements that Tylenol does.
Right.
And so we have a specific way we need to make it. You need to do a number, you have to base audit, make sure they do it right, and they have to go through a regulatory where the FDA inspects them. Although that's true.
API kind of developed.
It's a little bit different. And
Okay.
so basically, sorry, I had a thing that appeared on my screen. So we did clinical studies, which are necessary to prove that it actually works.
Mhm.
We have one that's published in the premier plastic surgery journal, and then we have another one that basically is a double-blind placebo-controlled trial, the bruising actually. So we show that the technology works. We don't have to do any more studies. And so to make the claims of bruising, swelling, pain, things like that. So we don't need to do any more and see. And they're so expensive, like a
Yeah.
minimum, like the trial, I planned a really awesome trial. I had like all sorts, you know, I had John Hopkins, but it was going to be $1 million. And in the end, we just didn't have enough money. I had all really big names, University of Michigan, which since I went there, I care. So yeah, and so we just ended up not being able to fund it. But if we ever make the money, we'll fund studies. And for me, the one I really want to do at this point is it's so easy with the sprained ankle one to just do a simple measurement of the ankle and showing the difference because we've got lots of sprained ankles. Like the University of Illinois did a case study where a kid sprained his ankle, football player, in 2019 ends up out for 3 weeks, which is pretty normal. And then he uses our same kid, same ankle, same great sprain. He sprains his ankle in 2020 and he's out for a week. It's so easy. And then another school that I'm not allowed to mention because they won't let us use their name did basically their kid sprains his ankle, again, a football player on Thursday night. It starts swelling up like right away. The guy describes it like he could see it swelling. And by the next day, he puts a patch on. By the next day, the swelling is actually less than it was a half hour afterwards. And he plays football the following Saturday.
Wow.
And so that's a study I so want to do if I get the money. Or if any of your people
Yeah, money. Hey,
they
hey,
could get the research, could get a grant to do this. I've reached out to the NIH people and they basically are like, no, we won't fund it. So we won't fund homeopathy.
I think your probable best bet is to go through partner with a university that's able to go get grants for specific studies like me. We've done that for cannabinoid-based studies. I mean, we're just providing the genetics, genetic sequencing and stuff like that. But there are universities that have all kinds of grants for interesting types of research that are not mainstream. So, and I know what it's like to have a startup and raising money and getting investors and all that other stuff. So,
Yeah.
not a lot of fun. I want to ask you a patent question. I'm just curious because we had conversation. We have a bunch of patents, but we had conversations with other companies. They're always like, I don't know about patent because now you're giving your secret sauce away, so to speak, when the patent expires or whatever. And then there's the Coca-Cola model where it's proprietary, but we'll license out and we'll tell you how to do the. Did you have any trepidations about actually going forward and filing a patent for your secret sauce?
So no, but one thing, by the way, Len, did you also know that I advise a ton of startups? Did you know this? So I not only know I have this conversation with the people I advise all the time. In our case, it was a need because let's see, how do I describe it? So our patent is unusual and it's very, very broad. It covers any of the thousands of homeopathic remedies in any gel, any patch like this. So you could have any formulation of a gel. If you're making this, you can't make it without violating our patent. The problem is that it would have been something that somebody could have figured out pretty easily, at least the basis, I think.
Yeah.
And so patenting it helps because ours is so broad. It's not a formulation patent. A formulation patent, which is more similar to Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
Ours is the only way you can make it is add this before you cross-link, which is the thing you do with patches, right? So it was comprehensive. So in that case, it made sense. We did keep back some trade secrets. There are some things that you need to do to make it work. Do not show up in the patent. So even if they try to do it, they would have difficulty. In the case of a formula, but see, the other thing, I don't know what your requirements are, but in our world, again, because we're a drug, you have to put every ingredient, you're required to put the ingredients in there. Is that true for cannabis?
Yeah. State by state, there's no federal. The issue with cannabis is even CBD. There's no state. There's no federal regulation, so it's still Schedule 1, even though the FDA and DA both made recommendations to reschedule, but it's state to state specific. But we're a global company, so like for example, Brazil has their own specific guidelines, so you have to have this on labels. California has this, but we try to suggest and we also have a patent on the use of DNA to make recommendations associated with the endocannabinoid system, genetics. But on the formulation side, we try to consult everybody to use the same exact labels as you would do for a nutraceutical or anything like that, because that's the
That's a
direction
good
we're
idea.
moving into.
Yeah.
So just use the same kind of formula. But no, it's not as regulated yet.
Okay, so for us, and honestly, I couldn't have patented the formulation anyway. One, I would have to tell everyone.
Yeah, exactly.
And two, I would have, for us, it was just a really clear case of, yes, it makes sense to patent. The other thing, and this is just in case you have entrepreneurs that listen to this, the other thing you have to really think about isn't just the patent, but how hard is it for somebody to get around it? Meaning, like, if I patented this tube, which you can't see because I've got a background, so this tube, and I said that it was 2 inches long, right?
Mhm.
And somebody decided to make a tube a little bit longer, and that gets around the patent, why do it?
Yeah.
Right? So you not only have to look at it, and that's where, like, it turns out that because I apparently am way more knowledge, many patent attorneys and have told me, they're like, you get this way better than most. And it's because getting the patent for this was such a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
And so, so basically, you've got to think about all these things when you patent and whether you decide to keep it as a trade secret. Because if it's something where it's super easy for them to get around, like by making a small adjustment, you might want to keep it as a trade secret if you can.
Yeah,
So.
makes sense. And depending on your business model, and I don't know what the business model is, the sort of my question, but I'll ask my question in a form of a statement as well. if, if your business model is to license, so if you have other companies who are going to say, okay, I want to license this, now you can maintain that proprietary, little bit of secret sauce, and you just slap, their logo on it. And now you have a product that you license out to somebody else. Is that sort of the goal of your business model as well?
So the first version we licensed out because it was sold to physicians. It was sold only to plastic surgeons and dermatologists, and that's what Allergan licensed it to. So they're only allowed to sell it to those two worlds. Now we actually, you can find the product that's in the back here on Amazon. This one we're actually selling through Amazon and through our own site. And so would I license this one out? Probably yes. But it's a little bit different because this one's a little bit easier because we can advertise it directly to consumers. So it's a lot easier. We could have done the first one the same, but we chose to go to doctors.
But
so
do you like the direct-to-consumer model? Because, like marketing and advertising, you're having a sale. I don't know what the price of each, Active Med patch is, but if you're selling to physicians, maybe there's a minimum order quantity, here you go, but you're selling it individually to consumers. And is that a dual business model, or do you think it's do you want to do something more B2B?
This is the thing I learned when I went, and I was so naive, so incredibly naive when I went into this first world where I sold it to plastic surgeons. I thought the biggest thing, again, I'd worked in the homeopathic world, people just thinking that I had growing out of my head, right? Well, I do have one, but in the middle of it, right? Horns or something. And so my biggest thing was I thought I needed to prove to the docs that it worked. And we have this lovely study, which I could put up on a PowerPoint, but I'm not going to. Where we show this nasty bruise that stays around for 2 weeks. And when again, a placebo patch, and then we put the patch on the active patch. We have a placebo patch for the placebo and an active, and it reduces the bruising by 88%. Okay. And it's statistically significant and all those things, right? So I thought that was my major thing. Turned out it wasn't at all. And this is the hard part. I thought, well, if it works, everyone's going to want it. But it turns out that separating out who benefits, meaning the patient, your wife, your ex-wife, the patient, from who is paying for it, the physician, is never a good idea, because the physician, they were like, I had doctors say, oh, my patients don't care about bruising. I'm like there's something called dermal fillers, which like fill in pieces like here and stuff like that. It's like, who wants to walk around with a bruise on their face, and who would not care, right? And so I have learned that the hard way. And what I realized, that it's far easier when the person that sprains their ankle and it's swollen is the person buying it because they care the most. And so it's actually easier. And the other thing is, selling to doctors, you have to have somebody, you have to spend typically around $250,000 a year for a salesperson to go visit that doctor. That gets very expensive very quickly.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So is it difficult to raise money in, first of all, this type of environment in the last few years, but also with a product like you said, homeopathic, and you have a certain business model? Do you go out and raise money, or is it something that's you're self-funding?
So I raised money originally for the first product. And mostly the people that invested were the physicians, the plastic surgeons and dermatologists that used the product, because they saw how well it worked. I mean, the proof was in the pudding, like Dr. Geronimus he basically, it took him 2 years before he would try, because he thought I was crazy. And basically, when I finally got a good friend of his to agree to convince him to use it, he's like, yeah, I told him, I'm like, use it on everyone that 100% bruise. And he called, I think, 41 patients. And he's like, I stopped calling. And I'm thinking, oh no, it didn't work. Maybe they didn't follow the protocol on how to use it. And he's like, no, I called 41 patients and none of them bruised. You convinced me. And so those were the doctors, not him specifically, because I can't disclose
Yeah,
things
yeah.
like that. But the doctors that saw it work were the ones that funded it originally, and now it's really the Allergan license that funds us now. So I haven't fortunately, I don't raise money, but I advise a number of startups, and basically and I'm also part of something called New Fund, which is the largest, we got like 350 members, and we all basically are an angel investment group. And so I see tons of deals, I see tons of investment, and we all know that the funding situation's gotten really hard. But I also advise secondarily a number of startups, because I've been through the ringer. Like I've made all the mistakes that are possible. And so it's just really helpful. And it's so funny, because I was talking to my brother the other day, and I'm like, I don't know what I learned, but like the things that I see are super obvious, but I'm not sure that they would have been obvious 14 years ago when I started all of this.
100%. There's nothing that beats the experience of actually going through it yourself, no matter what books or anything that you read. So I
100%.
completely concur with you. How do you measure success for yourself?
For this product, it's having it become a household name. I mean, I want it out there, because in the end, it goes back to, I want to help the most number of people. And one of the weird things I do, that I don't know any product, we literally tell people when it doesn't work. Like it works on ligament, tendons, and muscles. So sprains and strains works amazingly. But people are like, will it work on arthritis? And I'm like, nope, doesn't work on arthritis. And it's literally on our website. And I don't know of many products that will tell you, yeah, don't buy it for this, because I'm sure I lose sales, but for me, ethically, it's the way to go. For me personally, we talked about where we live, which is ridiculously amazing. I've had one of the most, going back to our childhood, right? I ask people all the time, would you ever have imagined that your life would have been this amazing when you graduated from high school?
When I graduated from high school, my parents kicked me out, or before they kicked me out of the house, and I was homeless. So did I imagine? I imagined that I was here for a greater purpose than I was in, but in the moment, you're sort of in this cycle of trying to survive.
Yeah. And I fortunately did not quite have that situation, but I was definitely, scrounging every penny I had to basically be able to pay for my first semester of college. And I never thought I'd live my life. And so success for me is like, I feel like I mean, I would like active men to be successful because it matters. It's what I've really focused on for the last 14 years. I don't get to practice homeopathy anymore. I loved that. It was so much fun. People walking in and saying, "You have changed my life." You can't beat that. But I think I've just been very fortunate, and there's not. I would like afternoon to be successful, but I don't know that like if it doesn't meet what I always wanted it to be, I still feel like the ride has been amazing.
Yeah, you have a sense of fulfillment. Um, okay, I have some questions I ask all my guests if you listen to
I
or
did, and I had to go study one of them because I'm like, shit, I don't know these answers.
all right, so let's start with the very first concert that you attended,
I,
if you
the
remember.
first concert I saw was the Moody Blues with my father when I was very young.
Very cool. What was that in Detroit?
He was in Detroit. Don't ask me anymore because I just remember everybody had lighters. That's all I remember of it.
Yeah, now they have cell phones instead of
Yeah, my
lighters.
mom got sick. My mom had asthma, so she got sick. I have no idea. I was always my mom's replacement. I have no idea why. But yeah, I basically went and saw the Moody Blues as a kid.
What was the last concert you attended?
I saw Pink here last Wednesday.
Right.
Sutton with Cheryl Crow. Such an amazing concert.
Okay, so 5 albums that
I
you
know
can
this was
listen
the one
to.
I had to go study. Can I just go greatest hits on all of these? Is
You
that
can you
legal?
can do it. It's all
Okay.
legal. So, and I always preface this because so for the audience that didn't hear this before, it's 5 albums. You can only listen to 5 albums for the next year, and it can be like the name of the artist, whatever greatest hits. So you don't have to name the
Okay.
name of the
Good.
album.
That is so easy. I literally had to go, like, I spent time with Spotify and basically was like, I don't know the names of any of these albums. Okay. So I'm going greatest hits. Michael Jackson, Pink, of course, Pitbull, David Guetta, and I'm going to go with Nelly.
Wow, very cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's quite eclectic. Yeah, it's funny. Pink was grew up, I think, if I'm not mistaken, in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, where I was from. And I think I
Is
said
she
this
really?
before. Yeah, and my my ex-sister-in-law used to work at a like Office Max or Staples, one of those. And her dad used to come in and print flyers and stuff for her as he when she was a kid, trying to make it. So it was pretty cool.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a for I've seen her. This is the second time I've seen her, but the beautiful thing is you can see a bit of her personality. You see it, you see it in her songs because she's very like the why did I do that, right? Like, why did I do that? Which I say to myself all the time, but you can see on stage that that is really an authentic piece of her.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Although on the other hand, I think somebody told if you've ever seen what she does on stage, she does this like acrobatic thing.
Yeah.
I think she's 48 or 49. It's like, oh my God, how she can be in that much shape. By the way, Pink, if you're listening to this, call me. I would love to talk to you. By the way, it happened to be my birthday last Wednesday.
Yeah.
And I literally was like, wow, it was so nice of Pink to come for my birthday. And
Yeah.
literally one of my friends was like, Pink? I'm like, no, I'm totally beating 1,000 of my best friends. We're all going to go see Pink.
Well, you put it in the universe, so now you can
Yes. So
meet
Pink,
Pink
please
and
call me
hang
when
out.
I get famous, or even before I get famous, that'd be awesome.
Exactly. All right. So, final bonus question for you. Please describe what your room looked like growing up.
Yes, this was very normal. Like it was yellow. It had a bed, it had a dresser. Oh, it was very messy, very messy. Like clothes, like you could not see the floor. But suburban Detroit house.
No
Very,
posters on the walls, no cutouts from
oh
magazines, no
God.
artwork, nothing distinct.
Clearly, it's not that I remember. That's so good question. No idea. I could not tell you one thing. The only maybe lots of stuffed animals,
Yeah.
but honestly, I had no idea what was on the wall. That's an interesting question.
Maybe,
I'm really boring. We've just demonstrated.
maybe there's an old picture somewhere and says, there's a cutout of a Teen Beat magazine or something that you missed.
Probably. Yeah, I've just demonstrated absolute boredom. Yeah, I have no idea what was going on.
Joe, where can people connect with you, with Active Men, with anything that you want to share?
So it's really simple. Okay, we'll move my head. ActiveMen's the name of it. There's no E. And basically www.activemen.com. You can find it on Amazon. And yeah, and the other thing is, you'll see like if we one of the things is I love talking to people. So for instance, if you order, you will get an email that is sent, globally, but to everyone that gets it, right? But if you answer that back, I will answer. And I love like if it's like, well, I've got this problem, like, I try and be as authentic and answer, as many problem questions. And so that is dr.jo@activemen.com. And I love hearing from people. And I love especially when they tell me I've helped them.
It's great. I love that. And for my audience, thank you again for listening. Really appreciate all the wonderful feedback and the reviews. And please go on wherever you listen to the podcast, like it, review, leave your stars. And even if it's not 5 stars, we'll work on getting better. And thank you for buying the book. I appreciate it. Making Cannabis Personal on Amazon. I'm actually in the middle of, or not in the middle, in the beginning of writing the next one. So they'll be out soon, hopefully, as well. Joe, I want to thank you so much for being on. This was great. So I really appreciate it.
And I want to thank you because I just love what you do. And I'm just honored to be on the podcast.
Thank you.